Hello everyone, Richard Lewis here with another video, and unfortunately we're going to be having to wade into that mire that is politics, and specifically how this US election cycle has been linking into social media, the internet, and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you're as fatigued by it all as me, but this was something that I felt like we had to really address. I had a lot of people messaging me saying, why haven't you talked about this? Now, I know we're a little bit behind the curve on this one. It's been more than a few days. It's coming up to a week at the time of recording this, 5-6 days since this all happened. But I still think it's important. We've got information that we believe you should know if you don't already, if you haven't been able to get out there and research it yourself. And it's just generally a trend that I don't particularly want to see happening from big internet, personalities talking to impressionable people, using their status in what I consider to be an unethical manner. And I think you know enough about me to know that I've always made a stand against that. And certainly the work I do on this channel is reflective of that. So what are we going to be talking about? Well, we're going to be talking about Casey Neistat's video where he comes out and basically, to call it an endorsement would be a fucking understatement. But he comes out and says he's going to be voting for Hillary Clinton, lists a lot of reasons why, and basically frames that if you don't not only vote for Hillary Clinton, but also encourage everybody that you can to also vote for Hillary Clinton, you're doing something completely damaging to American society, that you're very much on the wrong side of a one-sided argument, that there is only one side of righteousness, and that is that you absolutely have to endorse Clinton and be adamantly against Trump. Now, I've talked about this a lot on this channel in other videos, certainly on Twitter. The absolute contempt for the democratic process I've seen during this election cycle is staggering to me. I'm somebody that, like a lot of people, I think, has been disenfranchised by, democracy as we know it in the West. It certainly doesn't always satisfy. We certainly don't always get the candidates that we deserve, or maybe we do. It's hard to say. But certainly this U.S. election cycle is like nothing I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm an old dude, This one is just the lowest common denominator. This is like the 80s parodies of what politics would look like come to life. It's really grotesque. And I see a lot of people not really trying to course correct with sensible discourse. Instead, what they're doing is they're feeding this stupidity. They're feeding this idea that somehow it's okay to have total disregard for the democratic process as long as you believe you're right. And I'm seeing that on both sides. This video is an example of just some of the irresponsible depths that people are going to in a bid to get their candidate in the White House. So let's just play a little bit of it, and then we're going to talk about it.
Hillary Clinton. I will be voting for Hillary Clinton. I avoid talking politics on this channel, on this forum, because politics are divisive. There's always two sides. Republicans and Democrats. There's left and there's right. I can have my opinion and there will always be an opposing one. That is the nature of a healthy democracy. But this is not that. This is about a megalomaniac who's driven by nothing but ego. A man who cares exactly zero about the people of this country. A person who brags about sexually assaulting women and shames others for the way they look. I'm speaking up now because this election has very little to do with politics, policy, or legislation. This has to do with morals and principles. I'm voting for Hillary because, make no mistake, there is only one person that can defeat him. One person that can keep him away from power, and it is her.
So let's just address a few points there in that video, that part of the video. You can see, first of all, he says, I avoid talking politics because they're divisive, which is absolutely true. A lot of people feel very strongly about it. Perhaps right now, look around, you can see how strongly people feel about it. People even acting violent towards people for wearing T-shirts and hats of the candidate of their choice. And obviously, when you start bringing this up, even if you don't mean to, it certainly can stir up a lot of hate. But it also makes sense, if you just from a business perspective, and we're going to talk about that's pretty much the prime motivator for Casey Neistat. I'm surprised a lot of YouTubers coming out and saying this guy is always been an ethical dude. He's not a shill. Very interesting because he's worked in advertising for 10 years. He's a shill by choice. Not just a shill for the money. He seems to like inventing ways to shill for other companies. And I'm very much in the Bill Hicks school when it comes to people who work in advertising. But you can go look up that quote if you really want to. And I suppose I should have the caveat that I'm joking about that, but whatever. Bill Hicks is fucking greatly missed, like a lot of people who would have torn this election cycle to shreds. But he says, I avoid talking politics because they're divisive, and that's fine. Why choose to do it now? I think we're going to see why. And he says there'll always be dissenting opinions. There's always two sides, and that's the nature of a healthy democracy. But, of course, what he's doing here is he is actively tearing away at the fabric of what he says is a healthy democracy, which is there's dissenting opinions, two sides to an argument, that this democracy isn't healthy. He says this isn't that. And I'm always intrigued. I hear a lot of people saying that this is different, that this election is different. There's more at stake here. Absolutely not true. It's like any other election. You have two candidates that represent two sets of policies, two sets of ideas, and you pick one. And the person who gets elected, who has acquired the most votes, will be in charge and will get to enact those policies, those ideas over a 4-year period. And then we start this bullshit cycle all anew. That's it. And in a healthy democracy, you have to allow people the right to vote for the candidate they want. You certainly don't come out and publicly shame them. You certainly don't come out and make long videos designed to try and influence and skew it. You let the democratic process pan out the way it should. Now, he immediately proves how not interested in the two sides healthy democracy argument he is, because he lists all of Trump's faults, right? Which is fine. They're many. They're numerous. The idea of getting a perfect electoral candidate, the idea of a perfect politician is a farce in and of itself. I think we all know they're not like us, that politics, it seems to be so far removed from what the general populace always want, but we muddle through and we try and make the best of a bad situation because ultimately nothing has been suggested that is better. This is the democratic process we have. If you do not like the system, you have to change the system. This video isn't even criticizing the system, even though inadvertently it's criticizing the system. Because what it's saying is that somehow, despite the nature of a healthy democracy, despite there being two sides, somehow we've ended up with not two sides. We've ended up with a megalomaniac, nightmarish candidate on one side and somebody who is the only sane choice on the other side, and yet somehow it's a close race, which doesn't sound very logical to me. It doesn't sound very accurate to me. So immediately you can see the tone of this video. Trump bad, Clinton good. And that's fine, I guess. I guess that's the candidate that he has chosen. But let's just go on a little bit more. And he says the election has little to do with politics and policy. Well, how fucking tragic it is that you're admitting that is your outlook, because the election should only be about politics and policy. And the only reason it hasn't been about politics and policy is because, first of all, the mainstream media, they obviously, look, we know how that works. The mainstream media, print media, it's a dying medium. They need to push out what is the most constant, sensational story. And more often than not, let's say, for example, if one candidate had done something that's quite complex and illegal, or it's about an abuse of the system, which requires some nuance and what people might not understand, that's not as sensational or sexy as, from a newspaper perspective, as someone coming out and saying something scandalous. It's very easy to take a soundbite and say, look at what he said, look at what he said, rather than look at what this person's doing. It's far easier to explain. It's more likely to sell papers, And ultimately, that's what they're in, the mainstream media now. They are in the business of prolonging their life cycle so they can figure out a way to monetize new media. That's what's happening. That's why so many non-conventional journalists have overtook mainstream media in terms of influence, in terms of hits, in terms of where people go to get their information. In fact, the mainstream media have been directly responsible for the rise of all of these alternatives by simply not just doing the job of reportage. And people are tired of it. People want the facts. They don't want everything to be heavily editorialized, heavily skewed. And I think we've seen in this election cycle that it's got to an all-time ridiculousness. In fact, there's actual legitimate mainstream publications that put news out that's about as skewed as this Casey Neistat video, which is all you really need to know. So here's why this election has got a little to do with politics and policy. It's because people like Casey Neistat, and certainly he's not alone, they've reduced the talking points to little more than just high school gossip. Think about the debates. Let's think about the debates and all the back and forth about moderator bias and blah, blah, blah. Let's just think about it, though. How often did we talk about ancient history in the debates? How often were people getting literally nailed down on policy? It didn't happen because the debates have become a carnival, a sideshow. It should be there for candidates to outline and explain their policies. Instead, we're talking about zingers and who won, who had the best. Not ideas, but the best burns of the night. Like it's a fucking comedy roast or an open mic battle. This is politics. This dictates the shape of the world for the next 4 years. And people are talking about who got the best one-liners in. And unfortunately, this video is just indicative of that culture. You know, it's high school gossip. That's all it is. It's broad sweeping statements about whichever candidate you dislike the most. It's taking one little kernel of truth, one little nugget, one little factoid, and spinning it into a narrative that, you know, one candidate must be absolutely racist and evil, and the other is the only thing that can stop them. And again, I see this on both sides of the argument, certainly. But I've got to say, I think the Clinton camp and I think the leftists have gone a little bit more overboard than I've seen from the Democrats in a long, long time. And of course, there's some ad hominem in here which we're going to skip past as we get on with the rest of the video. You know, this implication that Donald Trump is insane, that he's got mental health problems. We saw some mainstream media try and put stories out about how he had a nervous breakdown, was committed to a facility without any, facts to back that up. So this idea that Hillary Clinton's sane, Donald Trump insane, again, it's not like that, is it? I mean, we all know, if we're balanced and rational people, both of these people are human beings and certainly have their faults. Both of them, honestly, are faintly ridiculous characters, which seems to be the way all politicians go. Anyway, so here's the rest of the video, and then we'll talk about the remaining points here.
By calling out all the big YouTubers. Some I know and some you viewers might know. See, making videos like this, they're not popular, they're not going to get you subscribers, they're not going to boost your view counts. But there is something much more valuable than subscribers or dollars, and that's backbone. That is not being scared to stand up for what is right, regardless of the costs. The top 20 YouTubers reach over 1 billion views every single week, every 7 days. We have the power to activate a demographic, an electorate that isn't typically very active. That is young people. You see, this generation, if we're all banded together, we have the power to ensure that this tax-avoiding, lying, racist, misogynist stays away from power and out of the White House. But it requires all of us coming together. So if your favorite YouTuber says things like, I don't like to talk politics on my channel, or I'm not going to reveal who I'm voting for, call them out. Sitting on the sidelines this time around is not okay. This election is different. And if this guy gets elected, and you stood back with your arms folded and didn't speak out against him, it makes you complicit. It makes you partially responsible for handing him the reins of power. All right, I'll see you tomorrow for a fun, happy video. Thank you for your understanding, and thanks for the time.
So right off the bat, he says that making videos like this aren't popular, which is weird because if you look at his most recent videos, it's actually right up there. I think it's second most popular out of the last 10 or 12 that he's released. It's up there with such classic content as the self-lacing Nike Mags video. This guy, high art, right? Like, but again, I don't mind if you like Casey Neistat and you like his stuff and you think it's good, and certainly all the other YouTubers are going to come out and say, oh, he makes great content, he's such a cool and honest and innovative dude. I don't see that, but again, opinions are opinions, and he's certainly entitled to them. I'm not going to make a video telling you shouldn't have that opinion. Take note. But obviously, this video was always going to go viral. Obviously, it was. And certainly, yes, it's got quite a significant number of dislikes and likes. That's the nature of what happens when you talk about politics, as he acknowledged himself. But there was no chance that this wasn't going to get reported on, especially in a tired and tedious election cycle where all you literally have to do to make front page news is come out and say you hate Donald Trump. That's all you have to do. I'm pretty sure I could get a front page expose right now if I was willing to do the same. I'm exaggerating. But, anybody of a certain level of celebrity is certainly going to get that attention. And, the idea that a man who's worked in advertising for 10 years, a man who's been on social media and creating content since, I think, 2003, maybe even longer, the idea that he wouldn't have an awareness that this was going to blow up is ridiculous. So then he goes on and he starts talking about the other YouTubers. Right. And he's saying, now, when you make videos like this, you don't get money, but you don't get subscribers, but there's something more valuable, backbone. Well, I'm glad you agree, because I think backbone's important, which is why I've always taken a stance that I have, where, I do run up against big businesses. I do call people out. I do investigative journalism. That certainly isn't going to be popular. I have been threatened with lawsuits. I've been threatened with physical violence. But I still do what I do because I believe in the public interest. Even if that same public doesn't want to hear what I've got to say, I'll try and get that information out to them because I passionately believe in that. Now, if you think Backbone is taking a fan base of 5 million people, a large number of which I would say are young, by your own admission, you talk about how there are young people that aren't very active politically. So they're young, and I guess with youth, you can say they're impressionable, and they look to you for your opinions. Where is the backbone in basically utilizing your existing fan base to go and pressure other people to come out and support what you've done and what you've said? That is not backbone. That is the definition of spineless, isn't it? You have basically tried to stir up a mob to go and shame and attack other people into doing the same thing you're doing because you feel so strongly that Clinton needs to win this election. You will happily employ a dirty tactic to try and get other YouTubers to follow suit. That's cowardice. So let's just talk about that, right? You may not have named anyone by name, but you do say the top 20 YouTubers. So there's a heavy implication right there. I'm pretty sure I can now find out who the top 20 YouTubers are. And you're trying to leverage your sizable fan base to basically go after them and say, hey, why aren't you doing this? Now, certainly, guys like Philip DeFranco, someone I have a lot of respect for, someone who's reported on stuff I've done in this channel before, someone who strikes me as, actually, if anything, a little bit too soft, a little bit too wishy-washy when it comes to trying to play nice with everybody. But certainly, his approach to balance and fairness is beyond reproach, as proven multiple times. He's even said people have tried, to pressure him into the same shit, that he's received abuse, that he's been called a Trump supporter, that every time he tries to take a neutral and even-handed tone, he is attacked. He's been called alt-right by feminists, all this other nonsensical gibberish, where he's basically been people have tried to shame him into taking a stance. And you have come out and contributed to that climate where your colleagues do not feel they can express themselves honestly politically without fear of shame, reprisals, potentially having their channel, losing subscribers, affecting their livelihood. Well, fuck you. Seriously, fuck you for doing that. Because you could have just done this video and said, here's what I'm going to do, and here's why I think it's important. And there's still ethical questions about that. But then you actually went and shit on people that contribute towards making the platform that you make your livelihood from You have literally contributed to them having a tougher time on the space. Like it just seems to me so counterproductive from somebody who constantly talks in their videos about how they loathe negativity. We've got evidence of that. We're gonna bring that up. But so this guy with his like little pathetic approaches to philosophy, like, oh, your haters just bring you down, man, and I don't believe in negativity and I won't give attention to negativity. You've just contributed to mob mentality. There is nothing more negative than that. How much of a moron do you have to be to not understand this? And I can't believe you're a moron, but maybe you are. Who knows? So he also says sitting on the sidelines is not okay. This time it's different. This call to arms again that we constantly hear, especially from the left, that this is it. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's on the right as well, right? The leftists say if Donald Trump wins, this is it. It's going to be like, Adolf Hitler's Germany all over again. I don't know where they get this from, but that's what they say. And then, of course, the extreme Trump supporters say if Clinton gets in, it's the end of Western democracy as we know it, and the people will never be able to take back the government from corporate interests. I don't see the stakes as being that high. I see this as being a pretty poor election year where we've got two bad candidates, and whoever wins is going to just be in for 4 years, and then people are going to wake the fuck up and be like, we've got to get some real candidates this time around, and they do one term. They're a one-term president, whoever wins. That's what I see. That's my reading of the situation. But to say that it's different, what does that do? That actually implies that this is, all those people who are going out that you've just riled up into the mob mentality, to go out and take mob reprisals against YouTubers, to pressure YouTubers into coming out and saying who they publicly support, which is disgusting and dare I say, deplorable. You're saying that actually if you sit on the sidelines and don't express your political biases, you're wrong. So that's just a terrible position to put people in. In fact, there's always been this ethical, standpoint where it's like, if you can talk about politics, but when it comes to voting, you don't have to disclose. You can't influence. Well, you can't tell somebody how to vote. You cannot coerce somebody into voting a certain way. That's actually illegal under U.S. law. But certainly, there's just this unwritten rule, I think, among civilized people that you don't have to disclose who you're voting for. You're trying to apply pressure to those people to disclose. And I worry very much. Let's say a YouTuber came out and said, hey, we want to, we support, I actually support Trump. This YouTube channel with millions of followers actually supports Trump. We don't in good conscience, we can't in good conscience support Hillary Clinton. What happens then? What happens then now that you've riled up a mob of YouTubers? Again, we talk a lot about harassment on the internet, and yet it's very weird, isn't it? It's very skewed. If you criticize feminism, you're going down. You're going to court, actually, as evidenced, by Canada or whatever. If you criticize that ideology, if you go after somebody who's a conservative, not so much. Doesn't seem to be quite as big a deal. And here we have something that's quite clearly a call to arms, and quite clearly going to stir up a rabble. Fine. Completely acceptable by YouTube standards. YouTube heroes, nowhere to be seen. Now, at the end of the video, it says this video was not sponsored by Hillary Clinton or any other political entity. But we're going to come back to that. All right? We're going to come back to that because that might be true. I'll take Casey at his word there. But let's just talk a little bit about who Casey is. Because, look, I kind of follow YouTubers and stuff, but I actually find it a little bit fucking sad. I think there's a big difference between being a YouTuber and being somebody who uses the YouTube platform to put their information and content out there. I'm certainly in the latter. I have no interest in the celebrity side of it. It wouldn't matter how big this channel ever got. I don't think it would change my approach. I think the only thing you would notice would be a discernible quality. I might get a real producer instead of Sam at some point in the background. He's actually... There he is, actually here. He's got flu at the moment, bless him. Land. He's sniffing the whole time. Yeah. So he's just muted and not talking. That, and he's lying in bed eating chips. Go back to sleep. So that would be the only recognizable change, I think. But, Casey Neistat's been around. He's been doing this for a long, long time. Certainly, he's put out some interesting content. He's put out content that people like. He's had this rise, and then he used to do these quite famous blogs and stuff, or vlogs, I should say. But let's just talk a little bit about his career in advertising. This is a guy who's directed television commercials. And he's worked with clients like Samsung, Nike, Google, Mercedes-Benz, and you know, he's been very open about this. He hasn't failed to disclose or anything like that. But certainly, this is a guy, when we talk about, oh, you know, he seems completely honest and open and not likely to shill. You know, I'm not getting that vibe. I think if you had friends, you know, like those clients you've worked with, maybe they might be inclined to chuck you some free stuff. Maybe, you know, it's just good business practice when you're making lots of money to occasionally pick up a product and just review it on your channel. And maybe next time there's a directorial gig going around, you know, maybe you get it, right? Like, this is how business works. We all know about cronyism. We all know how it happens at the highest level. It's not, people always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And Casey Neistat knows those people. So he did this video. Well, in fact, actually, no. Let's just rewind before we even get into that. So, Casey Neistat has said that this wasn't sponsored. Well, how strange it is that Philly D, again, Philip DeFranco, admitted that people offered him money to endorse Hillary Clinton, that there were people going out there approaching YouTubers to make a video like Casey Neistat's around the same time that Casey Neistat made the video. And obviously Philip DeFranco showed his integrity and turned it down. Here's the video.
Trump. And that's not to say that potentially other people will not be paid. As I talked about, I believe it was about a week ago, a third party had offered me money to be in a pro-Hillary Clinton video. I, of course, declined because, as I've repeated multiple times over this entire election cycle, but let's say it again, with my show and how I do it, I do not believe that it is my place to tell people to vote for any specific candidate. But even with the knowledge that a third party was out there offering that, Casey Neistat, in my opinion, has never provided me with a reason to think that money is the thing that motivates him or can make him do something he wouldn't normally do. I think that he was just personally passionate about this election, and that's why he's
so there you go. You know, irrefutable, because I don't think Philip DeFranco is just going to make that up. In fact, he's been, as you can see from that, the tone, he's still very supportive of Casey Neistat. He's saying Casey Neistat isn't a shill. He's saying he doesn't believe he would shill for Hillary Clinton in exchange for money. So that's fine. That's fine. Now, I want to draw your attention to this other video. Again, I already talked about Casey Neistat's incredible approach to philosophy. This is his Haters Are Losers video. That's what's called, Haters Are Losers. Like, if you hate something, you're a loser. If you critique something, you're a loser. If you're negative towards something, you're dragging it down. But in this video, you know, he talks about, first of all, how he has worked in advertising and how his videos, when he does, I don't know, a video advertising McDonald's, a video advertising Nike trainers, whatever it might be, a big corporation, he says that he would never betray his audience by not disclosing, you know, that it was a paid advertising. Completely ignores that, you know, you could have a relationship there which doesn't expressly run. And just watch how negative he is to people that critique him and say this is native advertising or whatever. For somebody who doesn't like negativity, he gets pretty negative in this clip.
Foremost, haters are losers. Haters are unquestionably losers. They bring people down in hopes of elevating themselves, but that's not how the world works. If you're bringing someone else down, you're going right there with them. That is fact. I want to address a couple of specific haters on here. I don't want to mention them by name because I don't want to promote like negativity in the hopes that you might get a little attention. But I often get comments on my vlogs that are like, this is an advertisement. Like my McDonald's video where my friend Oscar and I went and ate McDonald's. I've made advertisements before. This right here, this is a commercial for Nike. This right here, this is a commercial for Mercedes-Benz. I'm very open about that. What would possess you to write in my comments that a video where I'm like bashing McDonald's is an advertisement for them? Are you a oh, he's not gonna pull one over on me. This is an advertisement. I'm smarter than the world. Here, I'll put it in the comments. You. I've worked in advertising a decade. You don't get paid for shit like that. The reason why I take it so personally when people suggest that is I'm very open about when I'm doing advertising. I wouldn't try to pull one over on you, my audience, by tricking you, by making some video about like some fast food that's actually an advertisement. Or yesterday.
So there you go. And just ignore the slushy nonsense about, you know, philosophy and and ignore the hypocrisy and the contradiction. That's neither here nor there. I mean, very often you'll find that, because nobody calls YouTubers out, nobody calls personalities out, they can contradict themselves in a matter of seconds. They can say very disparate things. They can have this cognitive dissonance, and all their fans will do the same. It doesn't really matter. It's not important. That's probably a video for another day. But what he does say is that he would absolutely disclose. He wouldn't hide anything. He'd be completely open. Well, then, I'm glad he says that, because it does beg the question that at some point in his video about Hillary Clinton and why he's voting for Hillary Clinton, which was only 2 minutes 30 long, something like that. It was very short. Great work, a great day's work for him. He's just banged out some drivel, 3 minutes and 4.4 million hits and climbing. Well done. But let's talk about that openness. This is a guy who has had a previous relationship, a previous business relationship, I guess would be a way to describe it, with Hillary Clinton. And has certainly met Hillary Clinton. And as we're going to show, certainly knows Hillary Clinton well enough to have taken personal phone calls with Hillary Clinton. And I think it's very important that you realize that money doesn't have to change hands for these things to be advertising, for these things to be conflict of interest. You don't just have to disclose, hey, I took money for this. If there's a favor implied or otherwise down the road, if you're doing a favor for somebody effectively, based on what you might get or things you've already received, whether it's reciprocation or, whatever it might be, that's a conflict of interest, and you should probably be a little bit open about that. Now, all it would have took in his video for it to be a little bit more transparent and for his credibility not to be questioned would be to say, look, I've met Hillary Clinton in the past. This is why I endorse her. I've met her. She's done a lot of good work. In fact, look, this is why I want to support her for the YouTube generation. She welcomed me with open arms. How many senators, how many other first ladies have done that? And if you say that and include the clip, then nobody could question your integrity. You didn't, though. And you deliberately didn't. Let's be real about it, Casey. Again, you work in advertising. You know about conflict of interest. You know about disclosure. You know about all this stuff. You didn't want to disclose that because it would diminish the impact of the video, because people might rightly go, right, he's had a previous relationship with Hillary Clinton. He knows Hillary Clinton. He's met Hillary Clinton. Of course he's going to endorse that candidate. It behooves him. And you didn't want that because it would diminish the overall impact of what you were trying to do. So here's a clip from one of the videos that it's been put out there by a few sources now. So we're just going to show you the clip. Apologies for the quality. It's not ours. But I think it got taken down and people had to quickly grab it, and put it out there. So it's popped up on a few YouTube channels. I think Paul Joseph Watson used it as well in one of his videos. But here it is. And you can see Casey Neistat at a function, not just meeting and interviewing Hillary Clinton, but also being referenced by Hillary Clinton and thanked by Hillary Clinton.
That's Hillary Clinton putting on her wireless mic. You can look at me,
okay,
but you should feel comfortable to look at Van as well.
Okay, great.
Let me check the shot. That's me, Casey Neistat. Neistat. My brother Van and I make movies. The movie you see us shooting here is for an art benefit. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is the night of the art benefit.
Thurston, I'm Van Neistat. Hey. Nice to meet you.
Here we are posing with Sonic Youth.
We are happy to present.
Here are two girls presenting Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer with a deli cup. Here's the part of Senator Clinton's acceptance speech where she sort of thanks us, the Neistat brothers.
I also, I think, want to thank Casey and Van Neistat.
Now, it's not just that video that points to the fact that Casey Neistat certainly has a positive relationship with Hillary Clinton, certainly Hillary Clinton's campaign, Hillary Clinton's staff. Just how positive, because let's be real, she's a presidential candidate now. She's a big deal, all right? And maybe that always wasn't the case. Maybe this relationship has changed, whatever you might want to say about it. But just if that video isn't damning enough, let's just go back to a report in a publication called TheDay.com. This is back in May 15th, 2005. It received edits in December 17th, 2009. No idea what those edits were. I haven't seen the original. I wasn't able to get an archived version pre-edit. But let's just have a look at this. Now, it opens up by talking about, Casey and his brother Van, the Neistat brothers, and they're talking about how they were commissioned to create a video for Lower Manhattan Cultural Council Arts fundraiser, which is where that video comes from. And here we go. This is what Van says to the publication, to the journalist who's shadowing them to write this article. All these people are worried that one of these senators is going to look bad in our movie, so we're just ignoring them. If Hillary Clinton's personal assistant calls, we don't pick up. If Hillary calls, we'll talk to her. The follow-up paragraph to that is the suggestion that these brothers have the audacity to screen calls from everyone except the former First Lady herself, and that they even recognize her number is enough to make anyone sputter in disbelief. But Van and Casey Neistat are the type of guys whose sole purpose in life is to fly in the face of what people think is possible. And it talks a lot about, their background and how they had criminal, minor criminal activities, and, they were classified as dropouts, vandals, arsonists, drug dealers, and thieves. That's what they say there. It even talks about how Casey was the money man behind local kids selling pot. And Van was an accomplice in stealing money from a teacher's lounge soda machine. And that's all right. We've all dabbled in petty crime. I'm definitely not going to call him out for that. I've done similar hijinks. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't. And in fact, there's videos out there which you could find where I talk very openly about my own checkered past. And so in many ways, that would make me respect somebody like Casey and his brother a lot more, because it's, I love a lot of rags to riches story. I love it when people can come through and not have their background hamper them and go on to be a success. So I don't think this is about bitterness or jealousy or how I'm a hater and therefore a loser. I don't begrudge anything Casey has, but I definitely disagree with this shit. Now, if you just go through this article, it talks even more how they were, it says here, their first big break. So their first big break was putting together a short happy birthday film about Clinton administration member Fred Hochberg. That's obviously Bill Clinton at the time. The brothers were hired to create a candid video with comments by Hochberg's friends, including former President Clinton. So they already had ties to the Clinton administration. Their big break was from the Clinton administration, from Bill Clinton. It's here in black and white. It's a matter of public record. It goes on to talk about how at the $1,500 plate downtown dinner fundraiser, Hillary Clinton was there. And it said, you can see Clinton smiled at the mention of the brothers. Before sitting down to her table, Clinton smiled at the mention of the brothers. This is in 2005. There's nothing to imply this relationship went backwards, is there? And it says Clinton smiled at the mention of the brothers. I loved being part of their video effort, which I guess we're going to see unveiled tonight. It was a lot of fun. I'm thrilled. I can't wait. They're so cute. So ties to the Clinton administration, financial ties, I guess we have to say, because they were commissioned to make that video. It was their first big break. And certainly when you're doing video work for people in government, you're going to network off the back of that. They're going to recommend you. Cronyism. It's how it works. It's how the world goes round. If you think it's all about meritocracy, I got bad news for you, because it ain't. So, yes, hard work helps. Yes, talent helps. Certainly, though, it fucking helps if you're doing work on the side for a presidential candidate. Yeah. So, or an actual president in this case. So, why this hasn't been made a much bigger deal of, this is the first thing I would have used to bash Casey Neistat over the head with, because you haven't declared this whatsoever in your video. You haven't declared that you've taken money from the Clinton administration in the past. You haven't declared that you've known Hillary for over 10 fucking years. This needs to be said before you make a video coming out and saying that she is the only competent choice. Now, you might believe that, but you've still got to disclose this relationship. It's like if I went forward and somebody, I don't know, let's say a YouTuber wanted a producer, and they said, hey, do you know anyone who could do that? I wouldn't go, I heard of this guy, Sam Davis. I heard he's pretty good, and try and obfuscate the fact that he produces all my shit. I mean, I wouldn't say that anyway, because I'd be lying. But, I wouldn't do it. I'd have to say, oh, well, my guy, Sam, he's decent. Can push buttons, comes in occasionally, says yee. He's got a wicked laugh.
He's always wrecked out of his mind whenever we record.
Yeah, always wrecked right now on Lemsips though, not Beak. Yeah, so why would I wouldn't hide it. That would be dishonest. So this is dishonest. Casey Neistat's video was dishonest. Simple as that. It was dishonest. It's tainted. It's compromised. And let's just talk a little bit as well, just about this overreaching approach to getting YouTubers to engage with the youth, because everyone knows this election is going to be close. And actually, one thing I would say is, incredibly, it seems to be the right. Usually, the left's always been the party of the counterculture. Now that's the right, and they seem to be engaging more on the internet. You know, think about on the one hand, the conservatives are embracing the Pepe meme. Meanwhile, we're being told that's a symbol of hate by the left. It's not. It's a cartoon fucking frog. We got videos on that too. But this is a report from Adweek in January, start of this year, why presidential hopefuls are relying on endorsements from social celebrities. And you can read all of this talking about how, Clinton basically, worked with big YouTubers in the past, and big pop culture celebrities. Lena Dunham, had access to the Democrat Instagram accounts, things like this. And what they're trying to do is connect with that youth vote based on their own politics. So, you're a YouTuber. What's your politics? You're a celebrity. What's your politics? Do we have overlap? Great. We want to get in touch with your followers. We want you to influence your followers to vote for us. And again, I'd be very interested in to see how all the disclosures worked around this. I need to look into it. Maybe I will. But the bottom line is, you can see just from this article, it's definitely worth a read. Actually, the numbers it talks about is pretty crazy. You can see how all of these people, the celebrities they chose, the methods they chose, how people have come out and endorsed people. There's probably money changing hands for this, or again, certainly the promise of favors down the road. I mean, let's be honest, right? A favor doesn't even have to be something that directly benefits you, but let's just say. There's a big conglomerate of ISPs coming together to try and change internet law and internet freedom acts, or put limitations on YouTube or limitations on free speech. If you've endorsed a presidential candidate that then goes on to be president, I think you can probably call in a favor at some point and say, look, I really want to give you my opinions about this, and hopefully I can rely on you to fight this and not allow it to go through. Now, that isn't certainly a nasty or nefarious favor. It's something that would benefit everybody. But again, it opens the door. It's a foot in the door. You get to have those conversations. And as I've seen from Casey Neistat's output, he certainly likes having those connections. He certainly does. So all of this, I think, is worth just being mindful about, because you can't trust these people. There are so many convoluted ties. I haven't even got into the WikiLeaks stuff. There's so many convoluted ties between all of these people. There's so many people taking money, taking favors to come out and try and skew your voting. So let's go back to the point about backbone. And let's just go to what it's like to just come out and tell somebody how to vote, to try and inspire fear in people, to skew their voting process. I think it's disgusting. And again, at the end of that Casey Neistat video, it says, this video was not sponsored by Hillary Clinton, but you need to vote for her. You need to vote for her, and make sure everyone else votes for her, or the consequences of electing the unstable, irrational alternative will be far-reaching and severe. It is fear. It is the culture of fear. And you talk about backbone. Well, okay, this is real backbone. There's only one way that anybody should vote, and there's only one way you should tell people to vote if you are a responsible and ethical person, and that's with their conscience. You got to look at all of the candidates. You got to look at all of the candidates. No one's talking about third parties, right? Why? We're so enamored with the two-party system that we're disregarding candidates on the basis that it's a wasted vote. Well, let's not do that. Everyone's, lots of people are saying you got to vote for Hillary is the only way to defeat Trump. We're not even talking about her merits a lot of the time. Indeed, Casey Neistat isn't really talking about her merits as a candidate. He's deliberately skating over that, isn't he? He's talking about Trump's deficiencies. And the only ethical approach when it comes to talking politics is just to say to people, look, vote how you feel. Vote what you believe is right. Because that's backbone. In a time when people are going to publicly shame you one way or the other, when people are being violent towards each other, when people are firebombing political buildings, trust me, it takes courage to vote with your conscience, whatever side you're on. And to do anything else is to disrespect the democratic process. And the democratic process is what keeps us away from tyranny. It's what keeps us away from being a dictatorship. And it should be revered and respected. All the people that basically want to disregard the democratic process, throw it all away, throw away fairness, throw away impartiality, throw away voters' rights, because this time it matters more. You might wake up to something very horrible when you realize you've sold that democratic right away cheaply. And that is dangerous. That's dangerous to the fabric of America. I don't care who you support. The only ethical, responsible way to go is vote the way you want to vote. Anybody who tells you otherwise is a piece of shit. And you should fucking ignore them and disregard what they have to say. That's backbone. And if you vote with your conscience, trust me, you've got it. Fuck this guy. Fuck all the people trying to shame you otherwise. And certainly fuck non-disclosure of political ties while you're trying to come out and have a credible discussion about politics. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.